Assalamu alaikum, everybody. This is Hannah Zubairi from Justice for All. This is the first time we're going live on the Justice for All page, and we'd like to welcome everybody who's here, who's watching, and supporting Justice for All. Today, we're going to be discussing our Save Uyghur campaign. So as you all know, China is one of the world's most technologically advanced countries. In East Turkestan, as Chinese call it, Xinjiang, technology is used to monitor and persecute the Uyghurs with face recognition devices, smartphone scanners, and mandatory installation of spyware on electronics, DNA testing, and biometric testing. These tools target Uyghurs and surveil them for activism, for dissent, for religious activities. Police officers wear smart glasses to assess distances people have traveled from their homes. They use artificial technology, artificial intelligence. Profiles are created to predict whether an individual is a significant threat to the Chinese authorities and warrants incarceration. Up till now, as all of you know, more than 2 million Uyghurs have been placed in concentration camps. And now, as we discussed yesterday, we have news that a lot of these brothers and sisters are being transferred from the concentration camps into prisons or into factories where they are made to work under enforced labor circumstances. So today, a lot of times when we're doing this work, we often get bad news after bad news. And today we wanted to share some good news that your calls, that your donations, your efforts, the work that you all do with us has borne fruit. This was an article published by the Wired magazine yesterday, which shared with us that MIT has finally cut ties with a Chinese artificial intelligence firm amidst human rights concerns. This has been one of Save Uyghur campaign's big pushes. It has been a campaign that we have been working on for a year to stop MIT. And so to discuss that today, I'm going to have my colleague from the Save Uyghur campaign, Aydin Anwar, join us. And later we'll also have Zahir Adil, who is the director for Justice for All in Massachusetts and who's been a vital member of this campaign, to join us as well. So welcome, Aydin.
So like you said, these technology companies has played a critical role in detaining millions of innocent people into concentration camps and prisons. And the reason why people have said, the reason why we say that the oppression that Uyghurs and other Turkic people in East Turkestan are facing is unprecedented is partly because of the way they are being oppressed, and one of those ways is through technology. How do you exactly find people, who commit actions that China deems as crimes is through monitoring every action through these technological platforms, through your phones, your computers, facial recognition. Like, people can't even go outside of their homes without having to go through multiple surveillance platforms. They have to, be screened multiple times in order to run a basic errand, like go to the grocery store. And these systems are then and they are also connected to their IDs and who they and basically their profile under the government. So it's a really terrifying thing to think about with how oftentimes we talk about how technology has helped our society, and people see it as more of a progression in society with more we develop. But in this case, it's basically been directly linked to genocide and its ability to basically round up millions of people who have absolutely committed no crime. So with this news, obviously it's a great move forward. And just to quickly summarize a little bit about this move. So the university actually canceled the relationship with FiFi Tech in February after reviewing an upcoming project under tightened guidelines governing funding from companies in China, Russia, and Saudi Arabia. MIT has not said why it terminated the FiFi Tech collaboration or disclosed details about the project that prompted the review, but it has faced pushback from some students and staff about the arrangement since it began 2 years ago. And a lot of this pushback also had been coming from different human rights organizations, including ours. We've been doing a lot of on the ground work, which Brother Zahir will also be giving us more detail on. The vice president of research at MIT states, "We take very seriously concerns about national security and economic security threats from China and other countries and human rights issues." MIT had actually announced that it was going to have a 5-year collaboration with FiFi Tech in June 2018. So obviously this contract has now ended. FiFi Tech is also known to have helped fund a range of research on subjects including human-computer interaction, new approaches to machine learning, and applied voice recognition. And we also have the senior VP at FiFi Tech that actually responded to this move to seize its ties with FiFi Tech. They actually claim, Jiang Tao, who's a senior VP at FiFi Tech, says that they are particularly sorry about this and that they found MIT's decision disappointing. And he says that the vision of the cooperation was to build a better world with artificial intelligence together. And in addition to that, it was also revealed that MIT has cut funding from 2 other Chinese AI companies, including Huawei and ZTE. So they had cut funding from these relationships. But we have also, part of our campaign was also to call on MIT to stop its funding or to stop its ties with SenseTime, which has played a critical role in the facial recognition world that has been directly linked to rounding up millions of people. So we still are we're grateful for MIT for making the move of cutting its ties with FiFi Tech, but we're still vigilant in calling on MIT to completely cease ties with SenseTime and to make sure that it has no complicit behavior in the genocide and rounding up of millions of people. So that's about what I have for now, and we can take it from there.
That's excellent. Yes, we're going to discuss a little bit in depth of what these 3 companies have contributed to the suffering of the Uyghur people and the other Turkic people in that region. And with SenseTime has been put on the blacklist by the United States government. And this happened in last October, which coincided very well with some of the advocacy work that we have been doing here in Washington, D.C. And then again in December, MIT reports have come out that MIT took a deep look at their relationship with SenseTime again in December. So we are still on the lookout and trying to find out what exactly is the current relationship with SenseTime and MIT. So I'm going to pull in Zahir and introduce Zahir Adil, who is the director of Justice for All in Massachusetts. And so we can have a discussion about the role of the Save Uyghur campaign and what we have been doing in that region. As we start that, Zahir, can you tell us how long you've been a part of Justice for All? Wanted to give a little bit of an introduction to your role.
Sure, Hina. Thank you for having me on, by the way. This is, I'm great. I'm glad that you're doing this show. I've been with Justice for All actually for a while, for the last 5 years or so, ever since we started the Burma Task Force campaign. But then I have involved myself to varying degrees with some of the other campaigns. And of course, when the Save Uyghur campaign was started, I have been on right from its inception.
Thank you so much for being here today. And so let's discuss a little bit of what the Save Uyghur campaign is, where we are now, and what was our involvement with this Stop MIT campaign. So as viewers can see on the screen, we have our actual campaign, our actual action alerts that went out, and how we have been since April 2018 been monitoring the situation, giving the call out, and getting students and the staff at MIT involved against this collaboration. So Zahir, could you tell us a little bit about what has happened with that in Massachusetts?
Sure. I think it was about March 2019. There was a student conference on the Uyghur at MIT. It gave us a very good reason and a very good venue to actually introduce the Stop MIT campaign at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that also, because we already had a lot of people at the conference, a few of our volunteers from Massachusetts were attending, and they engaged people one on one. I should make a shout out to Dr. Mitalipova, a researcher at MIT, who also made it much easier for us to interact with some of the other crowd that was there. But all in all, with any campaign that we do, we always try to look for collaborations. We try to look for people who are sympathetic to the cause. And we've had several meetings, and I met with a few of the students at MIT. Alonso Dominguez is one person that I must mention. He's with the MIT Students Against War. And he has been very, very instrumental in reaching out to some of the other student bodies and to the departments within MIT. But along with that, we've also had help from the ACLU with Kate Crockford, who's here in the Massachusetts office. So all in all, we put it together. It's a joint effort where we do this.
Exactly. So, and I recall at that time, there were several times that you were talking to students in the evenings after classes, going on to the campus and reaching out to people who are actively involved in the MIT, especially the lab, the tech that has been set up on this. I wanted to also share some of the things that we have noted since the beginning of this campaign. So, MIT was helping three major Chinese companies develop technologies which were being used by the Chinese regime against its civilians in what we believe is a genocidal attack on individual rights and liberties. In collaboration with FiFi Tech, SenseTime, and Huawei, MIT was helping create a surveillance state unlike any the world has ever seen. So FiFi Tech specifically, which is that MIT has severe ties with, was building a nationwide voice recognition system to monitor its population. And MIT had a 5-year contract with FiFi Tech, and which is a leading intelligence company. Knowing that FiFi Tech supplies voice pattern collection systems to the police in East Turkestan. And similarly, SenseTime, MIT received a 1, according to news items in The Wired and other places. MIT has also partnered with SenseTime, which developed a sophisticated proprietary deep learning platform which allows the Chinese government to use face recognition, video analysis, text recognition against its own citizens. So this is how Zahir, if you could talk a little bit about what the actual actions that we asked advocates to do.
First and foremost, we asked everyone to call the MIT President's office and to register their opposition to MIT's collaboration with these three companies. The other thing is that the students were important because when students speak, MIT listens. The other group that was also important is are the alumni, and we had reached out to some of the alumnus so that they can engage one-on-one with some of the faculty at MIT. But for the larger audience of Justice for All, we wanted them to call. We wanted them to register their opposition to the collaborations because we cannot let China use these technologies against a certain ethnic minority, whether they be the Uighur, and tomorrow it could be someone else.
So this is really fascinating. So from us on the ground, a lot of times when we're doing outreach work, this is something that is something that we meet a lot of people who'll be like, what does one call make? What difference does one call make? This is something that I wanted, since both of you are involved with on-ground advocacy too, to talk about the importance and that strength of that one call.
So I think it's important to realize that one call is one of the thing is your one call is part of one of many if everyone follows that one call rule.
Mm-hmm.
So you not calling is you're just number one, it's obviously adding less pressure. I think people do listen when they're inundated with messages and calls about a body being complicit in genocide. I feel like these universities don't take these things lightly, and I think without putting that kind of shame or that kind of awareness on the body, then they're going to continue doing what they're doing. So it comes from, again, students and also faculty and staff who are part of this body, and I think, again, like your one call, like you might have thought, okay, this might not make much of a difference. Their inbox is probably full, but this goes to, gets applies to all other forms of advocacy that you may be doing. By the end of the day, it's only a few minutes, and it did make a difference.
Zahir?
Yeah, I think I will certainly echo all of what Aydin has said. We have this concept called Fard Kifaya, and very often when we ask people to make these phone calls, they say, well, if one person makes it, then the rest of the people do not have to make it. But remember that, as with other items which are under Fard Kifaya, if no one shows up, then no one is there. So it's very, very important to make that one phone call thinking that you're the only person that who's going to call.
And because of your call, this action is going to happen.
Absolutely.
So, my husband is an alumni of MIT, and this is news that we're absolutely ecstatic about. We have sometimes advocacy is a long road. A lot of times it's a long road, and to actually get a win at a time like this, and you can see what it took. So it doesn't just take the calls. It does take the visits. It's a lot of also dealing with politicians here in Washington, D.C., making them realize what a big catastrophe is occurring in China. And all of that playing together, and the blacklisting of these Chinese organization companies, and then how deep the ties are with American universities, all of that, just seeing that whole layout, it fits into this beautiful puzzle that finally, and then justice can be achieved and it's little steps that take us there. So one thing that I would really say to our followers and our supporters is don't give up. Sometimes this fight is really long, and we want to give up because we think, oh, what can I achieve? What can one person achieve? But seeing a win like this really puts into perspective that, yes, when we all work together and those components turn together, that's when a advocacy campaign can be successful and change can happen. So
I think this should also serve as a quick reminder that or an encouragement for people to continue advocating on their campuses. So if you don't go to MIT, doesn't mean your advocacy should stop, because I would say almost all, like majority of American universities have some ties to China in some way, shape, or form. A lot of elite universities have these particular ties, and I think there can be continuous advocacy on campuses. A lot of times these universities have China or Confucius Institutes are on campus that are funded by the Chinese government, and therefore China is able to exercise soft power in these American universities. And if you try to, let's say organize an event on the Uighur crisis, and have these institutes co-sponsor or have them, acknowledge this kind of effort to raise awareness about what's happening, most likely these institutes would not join in. They would actually even sometimes openly vouch against it. So these are examples of how universities are actually continuing to be complicit in the genocide of the people of East Turkestan. So even if your university doesn't have necessarily partnered with Chinese tech companies, there is some way, shape, or form that it's still either not being outspoken enough about what's happening, and things that you can do to kind of make sure that your campus is aware and that it remains vigilant in calling out any type of problematic ties that it has with the Chinese government, therefore making the university part of the problem and enabling the suppression.
Exactly. Just the fact that these are the largest concentration camps outside Nazi Germany, just that. And for our universities to be complicit with that government is sometimes terrifying when you think, because the roles of university is for enlightened thought, for taking civilization to a point where we said never again and meant never again, but yet it's happening over and over again in several different and Zahir, I know you're in your day job you are a techie. You're a Star Trekkie too, but you're a techie. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, we're seeing spilling of this. We've seen it under Burma. We've seen it when Burma used Facebook. And I remember, according to our own research, we found out, the Justice for All's research, we found out that it took 1,400 plus days for Facebook to take down hate mongering Facebook statuses that spread hate and against the Rohingya people, and which resulted in a whole nation, going. Changing their opinion and thinking that the Rohingyas were using weapons against the Bama, or they're using the mosques as depots of weapons, and all sorts of like untrue fake news was put out on Facebook. And it took Facebook 1,400 days to take that down, but it was too late by then, because by that time the final push for genocide had taken place. And today we're seeing very similar tactics in India. So I would like to talk a little bit about that with you.
Okay. Yes, unfortunately, we've been getting reports of India trying to implement the same sorts of technologies in Kashmir, specifically to monitor and surveil the Kashmiri people.
Mm-hmm.
I am afraid that perhaps the road that China took against the Uighur might be the road that India will take against the Kashmiris. In India, that might not happen in in mainland India, but then we also have to be aware that the same sort of hate that was used in Burma on Facebook to create the conditions that allowed genocide of the Rohingya to happen, those are the same sorts of conditions that we are seeing by the fascist RSS IT cells, where they are spreading hate against minorities, specifically the Muslims, to such a point that there was a recent something happened at a place called Palghar in India, and before all of the evidence was out, all of these people were on Facebook, on Twitter, already making a judgment call that this was done by Muslims and a Hindu priest had been lynched. That turned out to be false. About 100 people have been arrested, and almost none of them are Muslim, actually. So this is something that we all need to be concerned about. And the more that we allow such technologies to be there out there, and if we do not speak against the hate that's going on, we will see the same sorts of genocidal pogroms happening in not only India but maybe in other places where there are small segments of minorities and a huge majority population.
Well, that's something that we all need to be aware of. We all need to be vigilant about. And I can just relay something personal. Yesterday, I had posted on my Facebook page a campaign that was going viral in the United Arab Emirates about beef. RSS families own businesses that sell beef to the United Arab Emirates and other Gulf countries. Yet RSS goons in India are using the excuse that Muslims are eating beef to lynch them, to beat them up. So the hypocrisy, it's frightening. So I had posted about that, and you could see the string of hateful comments. There were like hundreds of comments that last night I spent a bit of time deleting and blocking people, but those hateful comments were just, it kept coming and coming and coming, and we saw that had happened before, once before, in Burma, when we went during the Burma task force high days, when we were talking about Burma and talking about what was going on in before 2017, or almost in early 2017, and it was the same sort of hatred that was being spread, and I'm just thinking, like, and it was frightening, honestly. Even though you grow a thick skin being in advocacy for a while, being in activism, but it is, and I'm thinking, how frightening must it be for the people who live there? Because now this could be a person who is just lives across the street from me and feels free to express that hatred online. So this is something very, we have to keep be vigilant about that. If we see that, it needs to be reported, and we really need to take these large companies like Facebook, like WhatsApp, like SenseTime, FiFi Tech. We need to keep guard, watch over this, and we should not think that it's something that is far away, because it could come here. And this is one thing that we talked about with ACLU, is they're very concerned about surveillance and the sort of hate that is being fomented here in the United States, and it's spilling through, and being organized on. Hate seems to get organized on these platforms much more than people who fight for justice, who fight for love between mankind. And so that's a reminder that we need to be more organized.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. And, I urge both of you to take this as a win. And, we need that. We need that positive energy to keep chugging along. And we hope, to all our listeners and our viewers, that you can also celebrate in that, and when we send out those action alerts, take action.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back here tomorrow at 3:00. Join us again.